Welcome to BAM, Badass Moms with Lori and Jenny. We are moms on a mission to share women's stories about life, fitness, aging, relationships, travel, and much more. Hello, friends, and thanks for listening. I just wanted to take a second to give you a quick reminder about subscribing to the show. If you have not already, just take a moment and do so. This will make sure that you never miss a daily bite or an upcoming episode. And in addition to that, if you have a few extra moments and like to drop us a review, we'd really appreciate it. And there's also a sponsor of the show located at the bottom of all of our episodes. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being badass. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of BAM, Badass Moms with Lori and Jenny. Today, we have a special guest, and we are going to dive into the dynamic life and career of Alicia. She is a trailblazing educator whose path has led her from the classroom to leadership, strategic planning, and her current role as director of a vibrant Montessori school in Denver. Get ready to be inspired as we embark on her journey through life's transitions, the power of education, and the pursuit of personal fulfillment. We hope this conversation with Alicia will empower you to embrace change, seek purpose, and live your best life. I'm going to let Jenny kind of jump in and tell us how she knows Alicia, and we'll get rolling from there.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Alicia, thank you for being here, first of all. And secondly, I met Alicia actually through a mutual friend of ours, my friend Desi, who is just an absolute joy. And she and Alicia go way back and have worked together at multiple organizations. And so we've kind of been in each other's lives, I don't know, probably about 5 years or so, maybe even longer. I don't even know. But Alicia always just stands out as just this like very strong, badass woman. And so when we were talking about the podcast and people that we are inspired by and would love to have on, Alicia came up. And so I reached out and asked her to join us.
Yeah. And I'm so excited. Thank you for thinking of me and including me. Like, being surrounded by other badass women is one of my favorite things on the planet. So I'm very honored to be here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Alicia, so let's kick things off. Why don't you tell us about your current now, what you do professionally, and then we can kind of work our way to how you got there, and we can go down all different kinds of paths.
Totally. So I am the sort of upper division head and assistant head of school at a small Montessori school in downtown Denver. I actually started my teaching career here in 2006. I had a really good friend who was another badass woman who tells people that she taught me everything that I know, like all the time. And she was like, you should come work here. I think you'd really love it. So I came here and was an assistant and a librarian and an administrator. Like, I did everything I could to work here. But I started my career here, and then, I fill those two roles. Part of my work is around strategic planning with the leadership team, and the school has just exploded with enrollment and recognition. And so it's been a lot of time coming from a public school principal background, helping them build systems and structures to be a sustainable and predictable school because they're so young as an independent school. And then also last year, alongside two just phenomenal teacher human beings, we designed and launched a middle school that's purpose-based learning. And so it's in its second year, and it's wildly successful and just a really cool adventure and project. And then, with that comes coaching and instructional design and community building and all the things I love about being in a school. So it's been really fabulous.
One of the things that really strikes me with you is that you and Desi, as I mentioned, have worked together in a variety of capacities over the years, and you surround yourself, as you said, like with other badass women, and you all support each other, and you continue to work together throughout your career, right? So, I think that you might take a break and then you work together again. And I think that is such a testament to who you are and what you bring to the table and just your commitment to these relationships with these amazing women.
Yeah. Once, it's funny when I sort of caught the leadership bug as a teacher a long time ago, I had a principal who's been my mentor forever, asked me to take on this really big project in Denver public schools. And I sort of caught this leadership bug about what it feels like to be a leader. One of the things she said to me is like, surround yourself with people you trust and can grow with. Like every opening is an opportunity to grow yourself or your organization. And so I've really taken that to heart around every time I move into a position or have an idea, like how do I get the right people at the table that both sort of put a spotlight on my strengths and also see my blind sides in order to help me grow, or my blind spots. And vice versa, how do I get them at the table so that they can grow and they feel super confident, which is like one of my favorite things as an administrator, is helping other women find confidence, and men and others. But she was the one that said, surround yourself with, people that you trust and that you can really grow alongside. And so I've always taken that to heart in any job I've ever had. How do I get those people at the table so we can like be better together? And the phrase that always comes to mind for me is like iron sharpens iron, which I say all the time, right? And so like that's something I truly live as a person, and then also as in my career.
I think you just really described what embodies being a good leader. I think knowing that you have to surround yourself with people that not only make you better at what you do, but that you can reciprocate and help them be better at what they do. And I think that's so empowering to really build each other up.
Or women leaders too.
Yes, we definitely do.
Sure.
Alicia, I want to talk about your mom. You have 2 kiddos, and from what I understand, they are twins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued by that because I'm like, how do people do this? So like from being littles up to like, I think they're in their 20s now. Like, how was that? Was that a surprise? Like, did you know you were having twins? Like,
no. Yeah. So it was a total surprise, having twins. I mean, yes and no, right? So like my husband and I both have cousins who have twins, but you never think like, oh, it's going to be me too. So it was a total surprise. So I have twin girls who are 20, and they're so rad. It's so funny. So when they were little, it's funny. I tell people all the time, they're like, what was that like when they were little? I'm like, no idea. I was like, literally not lucid, no clue. You're just like, I remember this is such a funny and wild story, but we lived in this really weird sort of like open concept house when I brought them home from the hospital. And one day I literally dragged the mattress into the middle of the living room and was like, I can't leave because I have to breastfeed here and I'm going to sleep here and they're going to sleep here. So before my husband is like, are you okay? I'm like, I guess. They were super, they were great babies, it's always a roller coaster when they were little, but I had a ton of help. My mom lived like 3 blocks from me. My brother lived 3 blocks from me. They both moved super close to me when the girls were born. Oh, it was amazing. And like when they were little, my brother would come over every Thursday so I could go to the grocery store for like 4 hours, right? I would just like pace the aisles with peace.
Isn't that so funny? As you become a mom, like before kids, grocery store is like a chore. When you become a mom with kids, you're like, this is my field trip and I'm going to figure out a way to go get gas, to
anything I can do that like gives me more time of just like no noise, peace, like trying to remember who you are, right? So when they were little, it was really an adventure. We had a lot of fun. I had it was a little bit wild. So I was a bartender and working in the service industry when I found out I was pregnant. And so I ended up taking a step back and like working for Vail and punching passes to make a paycheck, just like to have some money at home. And then I went back to school to get my teaching certificate during this time. So I was like at home with my kids, getting my teaching certificate. And then, like in those primary years of like 3 to 6, I worked at their school. I bartended on the weekends, and then I went to school at night. And so I was just grinding it out. But I remember thinking to myself, like, how will my girls ever learn how to be really strong women if I don't show them what it looks like, right? Like, and so that has always been something that my mom did for me around, like, she had such a tumultuous life, and just like for her to always, stand up straight, pick herself up, move on to the next thing, figure out how to be strong, whether you're faking it or not. And so for me, it was really important to like always have that level of, like positivity, strength, working smarter and not harder, right? Like just, and all those things. And I tried to model that over time. And so when they were, it was hard. It's a balance because you want to be there and you want to embrace those really young years, but like you're also still really finding yourself and trying to figure out what to do with your life. And so it was like, I felt like I was just kind of grinding it out for so long. But then when they hit like 5th grade, I caught my stride and was able to be like, okay, now I can do both. Right. And now we're in this really funny phase where they are coming into adulthood, sort of. And
does that really ever happen? I mean, I'm 43 and I'm still like, am I an adult? I don't
seriously. It's so true. Well, let me put it this way. I guess they're starting to realize what adulthood looks like. And so I'm trying to help them navigate that. Right. And it's both hard because, like I think as a mom, you're like thinking about all the things you could have done differently and also trying to share with them, like, this is what adulting looks like. It's really hard. Sometimes it's really great. Sometimes it's not predictable. Change is the only thing you can expect. Right. And so like trying to have that relationship with them and undo the teenage years where they don't want anything to do with you. It's a really fine, wild balance, but I think it's probably my favorite stage outside of like 5th grade.
Yeah. Well, and so you had double. So I had one that didn't want to talk to me at a time. You had 2 at the same time. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Sophia and I it's never been like that. We have always had this she's so much like her dad. And so we have this like connection that isn't like, we never butt heads really, like maybe once in a while, but it's over really stupid things. But we've always had this very smooth, easy relationship. And then Fiona is just like me and actually just like my mom and my brother, like her tendencies and her personality. I call her my sacred clown, right? She was like put on this earth to teach me a lot of lessons. And sometimes I'm like, I'm done learning the lessons. Like I get it. And so, like they definitely swapped out, but it's really been, I would say that my relationship with Sophia is very easy and it doesn't take a lot of work. And so I never had to really fight that, where Fiona and we really have to go deep in order to make our relationship work. And I'm glad now that she's in a space where she like recognizes that we're both working. And I've had to apologize a lot, right, to Fiona and both of them, but really to say like, I really messed that up. And I always believe like it's never too late, right? So I really messed that up. I'm really sorry. I'm trying to do better. And here's what that looks like. I feel
they start to realize you're human too at that age, right? Like that you make mistakes and you made mistakes and it's going to happen to them too. And it's that final, like you said, they're kind of adults now and they can actually have those conversations with you and they actually understand more because they're living it themselves.
Totally.
Well, better, you do better, right? Like we're growing up with them. It's the first time we've ever been a parent, totally. First time they've ever been a kid, So it's, it's a learning process for everybody. And you don't realize that when you're a kid and then you realize it as an adult. And I think that the whole apology piece to it, that's huge. Yeah. Acknowledging like, I screwed up there. Like that was not the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. And, and then behind the scenes, my husband and I are like, they're so annoying. Right? Yeah. Like I'm never going to pretend like it's not hard work and that it doesn't drive me nuts. Right. And I also say that to them. I'm like, this conversation is super annoying to me. I can't do it. Like, I'm so sorry. I know you have to be like so loving all the time, but it's not right now. I can't.
Well, and why is it that they always want to talk at like, I want to go to bed at like 10 o'clock. And that's exactly when my youngest is like, let's chat. And I'm like, please leave.
I know. Why aren't we on the same clock? We need to go.
I know.
So I have a question with twins. You have to have tons of funny twin stories. Like what one stands out with the girls? Like just something silly or, I'm sure you have a ton.
I mean, I'll tell you one of the sweetest stories ever that I remember is like probably, I think they were like maybe 18 months old or, somewhere in there. And I remember I was like sitting at my dining room table, like cranking out a paper, right, trying to finish up. And it got super quiet in my house. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And I walked into their bedroom and they were sitting on the floor, like touching each other because they had just realized that there was a second person, right? They had been in this like parallel stage for so long. And they were like, wait, you. And like, not that they didn't know, but it was like the first time that I think they were like, this is rad, right? Like I have a twin bestie. And I just remember standing there in like such awe of that dynamic and how their relationship would sort of like blossom from there. Their friendship would blossom from there. So that's probably one of my like most favorite stories.
Are they identical?
No, they're fraternal and
They're
like
fraternal.
could not be more different. One is like super tall and blonde and lean. The other is like short and petite, dark hair. Like they're very, very different. And in personalities, like wildly different.
Now, how was their relationship growing up with each other?
Yeah, good. Like good. They're super tight. They're really good friends. They like, it's funny to me that like that same story has been, you know, repeated throughout their life where when Fiona comes home, she lives in Los Angeles and Sophia lives here. And when Fiona comes home, like you can't find them for days because they're like in bed giggling all day. And like they have their things, right? Like it's funny. Somebody asked me yesterday if they were competitive and I was like, not with each other, but they're definitely like internally competitive. And then I think there are definitely some comparisons from there. And right now, what I can tell they're doing is like they're trying to figure out how to be friends in as adults, right? Because they've been away from each other for a couple of years, and like they're trying to learn how to talk to each other like adults and get out of that high school sister grind where they're like, you stole my shirt, you stole my friend, right? Like that kind of stuff. But they do get along really well and they have a lot of love for each other. I think they're just trying really hard to understand each other, which is like, makes so much sense to me, right? How they fit in each other's lives as adults. But yeah, they've always been super close. And there's actually, I have a really good friend whose daughter grew up alongside them. He and I went to college together and he was my neighbor for a while, my mom's neighbor forever. And she is 2 years younger than the girls. And the three of them are inseparable, which is wild because when I was a kid, I had a best friend who was my mom's best friend's daughter and her little sister. And the three of us have all been friends since we were born, same relationship. And the three of us all have twins, which is even
more. My gosh.
Yeah. So we like have this wild connection. And so the girls just have this really tight relationship. It's wild.
That's so cute. And it's funny, like my girls, even though they're 3 years apart, they're also figuring out that adult friendship piece. And, you know, when my oldest will come home, you'll hear giggling and you'll hear them chatting for a bit. And then all of a sudden you'll hear like a slam or a smack. And then, so it's like, it still goes back and forth. Right. And those moments of the slamming are less and less as they get older. But yeah, it's just funny to see them like connecting on a different level. And then all of a sudden it's like, they feel uncomfortable and they go back to the old way, you know?
Right. They're like, this got weird. Let's fight.
Yeah. Totally.
So Alicia, how has it been since the girls have moved out? It sounds like they both, one lives still local and the other in a different state. How has it been for you with that transition now being an empty nester, you and your husband? Like how have you kind of adapted and how has that changed your day to day?
Yeah, it's wild. Like it's such a wild, I think there's like this weird, and Jenny, I know you know this too, but like this weird sensation of like, you go back to like, who am I? Who are we? What do we do? Right? Like now that our life doesn't revolve around our children and like trying to break the habit of having your life revolve around your children. Like you still want to have all of those connections and all those things happen. But I'm like, it's funny. I sort of am like, I'm not going to stress or hold the worry of this adult. I wouldn't do that with any other adult, right? And so like I can't hold all of the worry and all of the stress of my children. And I do, and I want to be able to like hold some of their pain when they have it, but I'm also in a phase where I'm like trying to give it to them and like help them navigate how to hold it because I can't be the one. And I want to have that healthy boundary and I want them to as well. And it's really hard. And I think So that part is hard. And my husband and I recently, we bought a house in Charleston, South Carolina. And it's been this like weird sort of pipe dream that we've had forever. We both are obsessed with the water. We've always wanted to live at the beach.
But yet you live in Colorado.
Like we both grew up on water, so we kind of wanted to get back to it over time, live in a warmer climate. And when the market got crazy, we sold our house and we said we'd never buy another house in Colorado. So we bought this house in August, and we've been slowly going out there to work on it. And so like that's something that is, like coming up, is that we're going to move away from something we know really well. And our kids have moved away. We're always like, are we having a midlife crisis? It feels like we're having a midlife crisis. And so I think the thing that's really interesting, it's just so much questioning. Mm-hmm. And as someone who I have been privileged enough to not struggle with anxiety or depression throughout my life. And it's probably a lack of paying attention more than a reality, right? It's probably there. I just ignore it. My mom came from like a long line of army brats. So I'm sure it's like just shoved way down somewhere.
Yeah.
But so like, this is the first time in my life where I have pretty high levels of anxiety around change. And I'm like, it's probably about being older. It's probably about like living a somewhat more sober life than I used to before. And then also my kids moving out. It's like all these questions about like, what is happening? And so that part is, I think, and thank God I have such like strong women around me to be able to be like, please tell me I'm not alone. Like, please tell me.
It's right? The roller coaster of life, right? I mean, I feel, I have a younger who's 6, and then I have a 15-year-old stepson, and I'm not quite at that point, but I see where you ladies are, and I can only imagine like how that feels, right? I feel like, it's so far ahead, but it's not. And when you get there, like trying to navigate like those changes, those ebbs and flows in your life of, now being able to really focus on, once again, taking it back to what you and your husband really want for your next steps in life and your next chapter. And I think that's exciting, but like you said, it can also be like full of anxiety, right?
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
I think I even asked you this question, but there's so many people that are empty nesters now that I'm like, what do you guys do now? Because I'm like looking for, because we have one more year. Well, not even, until my youngest goes. And I'm like, the stuff that we used to do, is that going to still appeal to us? And what activities are we going to want to do next? Right. And trying to figure out, like, just like they're trying to figure out their adult relationship. It's like, how do we figure out our next phase? Right. So It's been so bizarre to think about.
But yeah. And every time we like go to Charleston, we try to see a new place or do something new or something different. And we're super big foodies, but I'm like, we can't just eat. Like, we just can't. Yeah. Like, we have to do more. But, I think that's the same thing. And it's like, I think about, our friend Desi, who like became this rock star salsa dancer in her 40s. And I'm like, if she can do it, I can do it. Like, I
never too late. I
just find something inspiring. Right. And I refuse to like let the dust settle on my life. I just won't do it. Right. And my mom taught me a lot about that, about continuously growing. And so I think that's really important. But I think the funny thing, and I would assume maybe you two are in the same boat too, is like, what I don't want it to be is that I'm only career focused.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that is a shift that I think since my kids have moved out, that I have been it's opened my eyes a little bit. And I think about, sorry, I'm like such a quoter all the time, but like Rick Rubin talks about like finding your purpose and how your purpose doesn't have to be your job. And I was like, what?
What have I been doing all this time?
Right? And like using, trying to think more about my purpose and what that means and how I keep it a part of my career, but also like just a part of my life, right? And finding something really passionate I can sink my teeth into.
Well, and we met with somebody else for this podcast, and she does all these different activities, right? Like acting and dancing and karate and all that stuff. And I just kept thinking, like, what a great way to live. Right? Yeah, right. Just keep sampling all these different things, and you find stuff you love, and you find stuff that you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. But you've tried it, and you've grown, and you've learned,
right?
And hopefully met new people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they say with age, you're supposed to care less about what people think. So that should be empowering for us all to go try new things, right? Totally. Like, and not be as embarrassed or not be as shy or, put yourself out there. And I think you do. You just get to a point where you're like, I don't care what these people think. Like, I'm just going to do it. And you know, I'll stand in the back of the classroom. I don't care.
Right, exactly.
But I do think that's what we should be encouraging every woman and guys too. But, you know, more specifically, women to really just like, hey, you know what, go try something new, or, you know, ask somebody to give you some suggestions on things that will take you out of your comfort zone. And it might be the next best thing that you never knew you even liked to do.
Totally. And like what, you know, open doors and all those things, right? Like I know that for sure.
Love that.
One of the things too that, you know, I worry about the fact that like, if we were to move away, I've built this life with all these amazing friends, right? And I'm leaving that behind. And there's a concern with the kids not being in school. You don't have the opportunity to, or if I'm not working full time in an office, how do you meet new people? How do you meet new friends? And one thing did stick out to me, that we have this technology now that people didn't have before. Right. So your friends feel closer than ever before. There's FaceTime and you know, it's easier to travel and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that replaces making new friends, but I don't think you feel as alone when you take those big leaps.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's something I definitely have a little bit of fear around, is like, I am so community driven. Not only do I like to lead a community, but I like to be a part of a community. I feel like that's a part of my fabric. And so I'm just, you know, I'm trying to figure out, how do I build a community in such a vastly different landscape, right? Both like the South and then politically and sort of all of those things. And it was really funny. I asked a girlfriend of mine who lives in Charleston about it. And she was like, I promise you'll find your people. It won't take very long. And like, you will make the connections you need. There are a lot of really like-minded people here. And not only that, but people are just very kind. And I was like, great. Kindness is a great place to start. I'll take it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had a friend one time, same kind of situation, was moving, and you know, she basically said that, you know, she's just learned to say yes. When somebody asks you to go do something that you don't know, you say yes. Invite you over, you say yes, right? And that way you're not putting a barrier up. You're exposing yourself to new environments, new communities. So not being scared to say yes, I think is kind of an important thing when you're
in a
new place, right?
Yeah.
Did you read? So Alicia is also an avid reader. And one of the things I love is that you post on your Instagram, like new books that you're reading and stuff like that. Did you read that Shonda Rhimes book, My Year of Yes, or something like that? I haven't read it. It's been on my list of things to read, but maybe we should all read that. It's like My Year of Yes.
I love that.
So favorite book, right? So big reader. If you had to promote, and that's hard, obviously, with so many good books out there, what's something that's maybe inspired you, or just that you've really been able to kind of read and love and somehow made a difference to you personally?
Yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. Okay, let's see. So I would say, like, in my career, I would say the book that I probably lean on the most is like Radical Candor, which is a super interesting book about just like saying it like it is. Yeah. And I think like sometimes I get a little bit of like, we know you have feedback for us. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Right? And I just think about like that open and honest communication is so powerful in so many facets of our life. And I love that book so much. But I think like personally, God, I've been rocked by so many books. I would say lately I have been suggesting Hello Beautiful, which is, it's an interesting story about like grief and how you manage grief and navigate relationships within this really tight family. And it doesn't turn out the way that you hope it will, right? And I think grief is always that way, right? You always think it's going to bring us together and we're going to celebrate, but there's all these like little fractures that happen with grief because people are just struggling. They don't know how to manage. So that's a really good one. And then like classic, The Book Thief is probably one of my most favorite books of all times, because you just like never see it coming. And the way it's written is just mind blowing for kids and adults. I could read that book 100 times. There's probably a million more books out there that I could share, but those are two like that came to me right off the bat.
When I was out with a girlfriend last week, and we were talking about, I don't know how we got on the topic of books, but we were talking about books that we read as kids. And she starts talking about this book that she loved and she can't find it. And I was like, you know what? It's funny you say that. And her characteristics of this book were totally different. So I didn't like register. And I said, there's a book that I've been trying to find. And it was about a ghost and a mouse and cheese. Basically,
I have that book. I have that book.
Okay, so
it's like The Friendly Ghost.
Yes, Gus the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah, Gus the Friendly Ghost.
So
That's
I was
amazing.
like, as soon as I got to the cheese, I was like, something about cheese croquettes, and she goes, "Shut up!" So we found this book, and she ordered it on Amazon. We were laughing so hard. We're like, "What are the odds?"
I love that.
And I still have mine from when I was. That's why we have it. It's such an old book, right? I have my copy, and I have like scribbles of when I was why is there scribbles? I'm like, because this was my book, right?
Okay, I'm gonna borrow it, Lori.
That's
and
awesome.
We were laughing because the way they wrote about the cheese made you want cheese. Like I was like, and that began the love of cheese.
There it is, right there, the moment. I love that.
Yeah.
It shows you how much books impact our lives, right? Like especially kid books, right? I mean, that's why I find it so important to, read so much with and to my kiddo, because it's like those memories I have of just reading as a little kid with my mom and, just really, they just go in your memory forever, like Corduroy, right?
Yeah.
Another classic.
Oh, I love that book. Well, and my dad used to read, Hand, Fingers, Thumb to me, and he would do this little drumming thing. And I mean, of course, now that he's gone, that memory is that much sweeter, right?
Right, of course.
But you remember those times where you read with your parents, or I loved Amelia Bedelia, and my parents hated to read it because it's,
My mom, I still text my mom, and I know, Jenny, I was talking to Desi about this the other day, and I still text my mom all the time, and I'm fortunate enough that her number has not been reassigned yet, and so I text her all the time, and I plugged her phone in last night, and all these texts come through of me suggesting books that she should be reading.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Still valid. These are all still valid things. I still think you should be reading all these books. I was just like, it's so funny. You've got to be able to continue to share that memory. And I was just like, yep, I have to keep texting you all the time.
So Alicia, just to tell you what happened with my text to my dad last week.
She did. And I was going to tell you that you can just text me.
I was not. Okay, Lori. So here's what happened. So hold
on. Let's tell the readers that both Jenny's dad has passed and Alicia, your mom has passed too. So
yeah, that's an important key.
Yes, that makes that.
Yeah,
that makes the stage.
Yeah. So my dad, he passed away a little over 2 years ago, and so I texted him last week. There was a funny little meme or something that I was like, oh my god, he would have loved this. So I just sent it to him. I'll just randomly send, and I got a response, basically a who dis. So I texted Desi and our other friend Lisa, and I was like, you guys, my dad's phone has been reassigned, and I think it was Lisa that was like, 12-year-old Sally and Jenny just became best friends. We were laughing. She's like, it's probably her first phone, and I'm like, or it's some kid
who dis?
Some creepy lady keeps texting me, right?
I know. Desi told me that story, and I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready.
So do they reassign phone numbers? That's what happens?
Yeah.
When somebody passes away, they're like, okay.
Yeah.
I know.
So apparently 2 years is the mark. So beware.
Okay. I've got a year to go. I'm going to keep.
Yeah.
I've heard to keep memory. I always think about doing this and I never do. They say, my little guy has an email account, just to have an email account, and how you should write them notes every day, like an email every day, just a quick little blurb or a memory so that they can go back. And I'm always like, gosh, that would be so great. And I haven't done it right. But it's a really cute idea. Right?
It is such a cute idea. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. I'm like, why didn't I do that? Now you get to this point too. And you're like, I should have done this and I should have, and it's hard not to do that because you're not in the day-to-day battle, and you can see a little bit more clearly. It would have taken 2 seconds for me to just jot down a little email.
I know. It's all right. It's not too late.
Maybe I'll make a goal to start doing it. It's not too late with you ladies. Absolutely not. They're only in their 20s, right? Imagine us being able to go back, and look at things that our parents wrote us and just have that quick little smile, right? And those moments of missing them or, just wanting to relive a memory. So maybe we should all make that our New Year's resolution. Or,
I love
it.
Something to do. So let's go back a little bit into your past once again and just say, if you had to look at your younger self and where you are now, would you ever imagined that you would be in your current spot, like where you are, what you're doing? Or did you have other, I think we always have these like, well, when I'm in my 40s and 50s, I'm going to be, and then you look at where you really are and you're like, yeah, I'm not there.
Right. Well, I think, first of all, I have to say, this is like the funniest thing ever that is always like makes people laugh. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be Mike Ditka. That was my goal in life. I wanted to be Mike Ditka. I wanted to coach the Chicago Bears. I wanted the sweater. I wanted to smoke a cigar. So I grew up outside of Chicago in Lake Forest, which is where the Chicago Bears train. And my mom was like this wildly boisterous, big personality, super fun, super beautiful, always the light of the party. And we had a bar down the street from our house called the Lantern, where all the Bears hung out, which is funny because you would probably not catch an entire football team in a bar now. Like that would be so wild. But they all hung out there. And so we would go there and hang out. And I was just like this little kid that would tag along with my mom all the time. And we would hang out with all these people. And every once in a while, she would hang out with Mike Ditka and his wife, and they would have dinner at this bar called the Nightingale and the North Shore, Chicago. And so for me, like literally until I was probably in high school, I was like, oh, I just want to be Mike Ditka. I want to be a football coach. Which is ironic in so many ways. And then, I was like, I don't know. My childhood was super wild. And then it was like a little bit of this like back and forth roller coaster. I didn't have a ton of stability other than my mom. And like my family was always around, but it was like, divorce and death and addiction and just a lot of things that were, just not predictable, except my mom was pretty predictable. And so that's what kind of kept me, I think, on the straight and narrow. And the ironic part is like, I was a great student until I got to high school. And my father died actually when I was 14. And that sort of like kind of just blew me out of the water. And I was a mess, like not a beautiful mess. I wasn't bad, but I just was sort of like, I don't care about school. I don't care about my future. I was so mean to my principal. I went to an all-girls Catholic school. I for surely called them penguins all the time. And said like, Jesus effing Christ all the time. I don't know if you want to keep that or not, but it's a part of my story.
Yeah.
But, it's like I was pretty disrespectful. And I barely graduated because I skipped school all the time. And now I'm a school principal, right? All the irony and the karma, right? Of like what I deal with. And sometimes I just look at kids and I'm like, you can't fool me. It's not me, right? Like I'm not the one that you're going to pull the wool over on my eyes, kid. Like I can see through you, which is probably why I'm in this job.
Exactly. So what ages of kiddos do you have at your school?
So our school is infant through 8th grade, but I only oversee the upper division. So it's 1st through 8th grade. And then before this, I was a public school principal, which is where I met Desi. And that was kindergarten through 5th grade. And then we had a pretty big multi-intensive special education program with students with intellectual disabilities. And then I was a teacher for a long time as well. And, like wildly before all of that, I was in outdoor sales and was a bartender for a long time too, which I loved.
I think being a teacher, a principal, you have got to truly just adore helping kids.
Yeah.
Right. That's just the bottom line, like helping them learn, helping them grow. I think it's such a amazing profession that is so underpaid.
Yeah.
But my son's in 1st grade and I volunteer every once in a while and I like, wow, the kids are on fire today. She goes, oh no, that's every day. Every day. And I was like, oh. Yeah. I think I got into education because I thought, just like every mom who gets into education, you're like, oh, I'll get summers off. I get to hang out with my kids, right? No, you spend way less time with your kids than you anticipate, right? Yeah. You spend way more time with other people's children than you do your own. But I got into it because of like schedule and timing. And I do have this like super passion really for like more than, I love children, don't get me wrong, but like, I'm super passionate about like how the brain works and like how children
obtain information. And so like, I've always been very close to that creative curriculum path around like, how do you design, which is why Desi and I were like such good partners when we were in a school together, because she also thinks very creatively about learning. And so we took this school that was, transitioning from traditional into project-based learning and just like blew it out of the water and did the coolest stuff. But really like looking at how children learn, and how you can make curriculum exciting and engaging and make kids really passionate about topics, almost so that they're learning and they have no idea. They're just like, this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
So like that part, and then also the community aspect about how do you build like a beautiful, strong, positive culture that nurtures children to learn like that and nurtures families to like do better. And I also just believe that like teachers are the smartest people in the world. And so it's a big passion of mine to like take teachers from I'm just a teacher to you are a professional.
They're angels. So I've decided every single teacher is an angel because they truly go above and beyond. And I have never met anybody that's in like the teaching profession that is just so selfless because they give and give and give. And I think that's just, it's amazing.
Right. So I just like, I am, I'm super passionate about the work, but I also just like find a lot of joy in it. Right. I like my team is phenomenal. These kids are phenomenal. I love the work that we do. And although it can be hard and you get up against some hard situations, like I think luckily I have enough experience as a school leader that I can see the forest through the trees, and those hard conversations get you to a better place. And so, I will say that leaving public schools, was the best mental health decision I've ever made for myself, to take a step back and take a break and be in an independent school where I have a little bit more freedom, both personally and professionally. And that was a hard move, but my mom was really sick. My daughters were really struggling. And I was like, I have to make this choice. And I think it was one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah. It just gave you that little push.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things about, just having that perspective, and that's what age brings you, right? Is just having that perspective of like when difficult things come up, and I'm mostly focusing on career because you were talking about like there's hard stuff that comes up all the time, but I have that perspective now. That is so incredibly valuable because when you're new in the organization and the working world and something comes up, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, or you get all fired up. But the more you see it, the more you go through it, the more you navigate it, you can just weather it, you know?
Totally. I mean, in my first 2 years of being a principal, well, my first year, fairly smooth. My second year was the strike. And all of my teachers went on strike, which I fully supported, right? I was a teacher for a really long time, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I said, please go, right? Like, I will figure this out. And I had 360 kids with, a handful of central office folks. I had them all in the gym every day, and I ate lunch by myself while everyone else took a lunch. We watched a movie, right? And then from the strike, I called the teachers and I said, please don't come back, right? Like, you need a mental health day to recover. And I need to prepare like myself and this community for your return. And we literally like rolled out a red carpet and brought in music and like did this like gratitude thing around like, and that was really hard. And it was one of those things where I think, and then COVID, right? Like navigating through
there was that.
lockdown, right? And I just think back, like, there are very few things that I will encounter that won't be as difficult as those. So like, that's my bar, right? Of like, okay, I can do this. We can manage this.
Yeah.
Even in a world of school shootings and all of those things, like, you do learn to navigate. And I'm a firm believer as a school leader, when you have really strong systems and structures and you know exactly what your values are, like deep into your core, any decision you'll ever make won't be the wrong one because you've aligned it to what you believe. And that's like, I coach principals on the side, and that is my biggest thing. Know what you value. I don't care if you use Brene Brown or StrengthsFinder or whatever it is you do to figure out what you value. Because if you don't know who you are when you become a leader, the world is going to teach you, and you should probably just have your own set of rules, right?
Yeah.
And so that has been something I have really fought for with people I work with.
I love that.
That's great advice. So what are you most excited about? Like, I mean, you've got so much going on. I mean, obviously you're excited about your new home that you bought, that you're spending more time at, but is there anything else that's just standing out where you're like, I can't wait to, or is it just every day there's something new and something exciting?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think I'm just really excited about like leaning into a phase of life where I have a little bit more control over the yes and the no about what happens to me and what like my path is like, right? So I finally feel like I'm in a space where I'm taking the reins on my life, and not that I haven't ever been very like strong-willed and this is what I want, but I do think there have been a lot of opportunities that I've said yes to out of have to, right? And now I like get to. And so I'm super excited about like choosing those things and choosing those people and making decisions. Like I sent an email about signing up for a rowing team in Charleston, and I'm going to do some consulting,
Yay!
right? Like all these things. I know I'm basically Elizabeth Zott.
Yeah.
So like I'm signing myself up for things that feel like they align with my purpose, and I'm going to contribute to something that I choose to, like I get to. And that feels really exciting to me to like take control of that, right? Like it's nerve wracking, but I'm 46 years old. I have a good 30 years left in me of working and contributing to the world, right? Before I totally chill out. And like, God, what do I get to do with that time? And that makes me really excited that like I get to choose. I always say like every opening is an opportunity. And I feel like I get to say that to myself.
Yeah, you get to, you don't have to. And
that's the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Alicia, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I mean, what a story. And, you know, I think you've empowered every single listener today about, you know, how to be a good leader and how to be a good mom and, you know, how to live your best life. And I think you're just a raving example of what we should all strive to do. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we look forward to seeing where your journey takes you.
Yeah, I'm super humbled for the invite. I really appreciate it. And being on here with the two of you is just inspirational in and of itself. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening, friends. And until next time, keep being you and keep being badass.